It's less than a month until Zimbabweans head to the polls, and the weeks running up to the all-important vote have not been without controversy. Now, High Court in Zimbabwe has barred 12 parliamentary candidates from Nelson Chamisa's opposition party, Citizens Coalition for Change, from contesting the August election. It follows claims that they were late in filing their nomination papers. The candidates are planning to launch an appeal at the country's Supreme Court. For more, I'm joined by Peter Mutasa, chairperson of the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition. Peter, appreciate your time this afternoon. Now, with the August 23 general elections approaching, how would you assess the current political climate in Zimbabwe?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And the situation in the country is quite tense. People are apprehensive. We don't know what is going to happen as we head to the elections. We are also not certain what will happen soon after the election, the morning after the election. Everything is pointing out that we are having an unusual elections, as always. And everything so far points out that we are going to have a disputed election. We have seen heightened political intimidation and violence, especially in the rural areas. We've also seen partisan discharge of duty and responsibilities by state agents and state institutions. We are also witnessing what has been known as lawfare in this country, being used against the opposition, especially the main opposition, Triple C, and also the independent presidential candidate, Xavier Kasukwere. So the situation is highly uncertain, fragile, and potentially it may be explosive.
Now, you talk about lawfare. Will you explain to us what it is? And obviously give us more tangibles, if you will. You've painted this picture of uncertainty. Can you give us more facts, if you can, that allow certainly our viewers and listeners to have a grasp of what's actually happening on the ground?
Well, so the very first thing is that the opposition has been asking for the voters' roll, demanding for the voters' roll, going to court, demanding for the voters' roll for many, many months. And this is a recommendation that came from SADC Election Observer Mission, AU Election Observer Mission, that in the past election, they were tainted by the fact that the opposition were not given the voters' roll on time, and they were not given the voters' roll that is auditable and that can be searchable. So again, this year, the judiciary has been siding with the ruling party in our view, accepting and denying the opposition access to a voters' roll. And this access was only granted a few days or a few weeks back. What it means is that the opposition is going into the election without checking on the voters' roll. They don't really know what is on the voters' roll.
Well, Peter, if you say that they've been given the voters' roll, it's almost 3 weeks, I think, if not a little bit more, to go through the voters' roll. Are you saying this is insufficient time for them to do that and fight it if there are issues?
It is definitely insufficient. The voters' roll should have been accessed long back when people had a voter registration, when they were checking on their names on the voters' roll. It should have been given long back so that if there are any problems or if there are any incorrect details, they could be corrected. But as we stand now, even if we see many inconsistencies and many problems on the voters' roll, nothing is going to be changed already. We are going to use that voters' roll. So already the opposition has been shortchanged. Independent people in the institutions that are looking at the voters' roll, they are unearthing a lot of problems on the voters' roll, with many people that are supposedly dead on the voters' roll, many people sharing same national ID, many people staying at one address. And these issues were supposed to be rectified before we edged towards the elections.
Are you able to quantify the impact of those discrepancies at the moment?
It is very difficult now because of the time. The voters' roll didn't come on time, and everyone is trying to look at what it contains. And it's now very difficult. And I think it was deliberate by Zimbabwe Electoral Commission They knew that with developments in technology, if it had been released, people would have flagged out all these issues whilst there's still time. So that is already something that the opposition has already lost. They will quantify the challenges, the inaccuracies that are there, but they will not get a remit as they go into this election now.
Well, Peter, somewhere where the opposition seems to have lost already also is in that disqualification of 12 parliamentary candidates from the main opposition, Citizens Coalition for Change Party, and have raised concerns about the fairness of the electoral process. What actually transpired there? Because certainly the information on the ground suggests that the 12 individuals made submissions after a 4 o'clock deadline.
Yeah, it's something that is topical and something that is bound to receive different views. But what is not being contested is that justice is not being seen to be done. In law, the lawyers say and judges say justice must not only be done, but it must also be seen to be done. We are on the eve of an election, and the judges are gifted with huge packs. $400,000 US, $500,000 US for buying houses. And already, once that is done on the eve of an election, in a country where people are poor, teachers, nurses, doctors, and other professionals are failing to get loans of $30,000 US to buy a single 200 square meter stand or to buy a small house, it means that there is bound to be doubt about the judiciary, how it is going to discharge its functions. But coming to this issue, if you look at the judgment, I have gone through the judgment. It appears it is a judgment that was not seriously considered, in my view, and written. There are many issues that are still pending in that judgment. I've heard that the opposition has appealed to the Supreme Court, and the matter is going for case management on Monday. We are all eagerly waiting to see, because there are a lot of inconsistencies. For example, the people who are the applicants who went to court, they confessed that they were not there at court. They were listening to what people were saying, the media, and what people were saying in different parties. And they believe that the 12 contestants did not file their documents on time. But the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission says that is not correct. Some of the newspaper articles and social media posts also confirms what ZEC is saying, that the court was too small and the people were asked to stand or to sit in the courtyard, and they were called in batches of 10 and 15. And it means that they were at court. And before 4 p.m., ZEC says it called everyone to bring their papers. The first thing that is there that the court raises that ZEC used a police officer to collect the nomination forms from the candidates. And it says that is not right, and it was an illegality. The candidate or their agents ought to have gone before the court or the presiding officer. And again, the second thing, the court says that in the register of ZEC pointed out that these were dealt with well before 4 p.m. And the ZEC's argument is that, no, we collected all the documents. What is noted on the registration papers is simply the time that we then dealt with the documents. So these are evidential issues. We're expecting the court to deal with the law of evidence in the way between the two contesting parties. Unfortunately, in my view, after looking at other judgments in South Africa, Kenya, and Zambia, and other courts, the judgment is too shallow. It did not deal with those issues for us to be satisfied that the judge applied his mind and dealt with the law around evidence. So we are waiting for the Supreme Court. We still hope that it may deal with this matter and bring normalcy to this election. Otherwise, it's a big dent, not just on the 12th, but also on Xavier Kasukuwere's application that went to court and which is now, we understand now, is about to go to the Constitutional Court. It will not be proper if the elections are determined by the judiciary exclusively, when the political contest must be about citizens and their political parties.
Well, Peter, let's go back a few years to the Kgalema Motlanthe report and shed light on the killing of unarmed civilians by military forces in 2018. How has this report impacted the political climate and public perception of the government's accountability for past actions? Because there were recommendations that were made by that report which, from what we understand, should have levelled the playing field politically, that is.
Right, so it's not just the Kgalema Motlanthe Commission report, but Kgalema Motlanthe Commission report was generally accepted as balanced and in many respects, and also its recommendations were very spot on. It is also about SADC election observer mission reports. It's about African Union election observer mission reports. All the recommendations in these reports have in a very big way not been implemented. If you look at the recommendation on the conduct of the police and its administration of the act that the MOFA Act that it uses to regulate freedom of assembly or association, the police has continued to operate in a highly partisan manner. We have seen the police banning many rallies, including the main launch of the Triple C party, the rally that was supposed to be done in Pilgura for this campaign, for this election. We have also seen the police utilizing surveillance to deal with the opposition and civic society. Instead of addressing the many recommendations that we've seen the government also bringing about many pieces of law that actually stifled and muzzled dissent, and that also freedom of association and freedom of assembly. For example, we've seen the promulgation of the patriotic bill, which essentially is going to shut everyone quiet, especially civil society and other progressive movements. We've also seen the government dangling the private voluntary organization bill. It has not been signed yet.
Peter, I'm running short of time and must go to my very last question and give you just a minute to respond to it. And this is around Nelson Chamisa, who's the leader of the Citizens Coalition for Change, and he's been a prominent figure in Zimbabwean politics. Now, just give us briefly, how has he positioned himself and his party to challenge the ruling ZANU-PF party, and what are their main campaign promises?
So currently, Nelson Chamisa is, in my view, battling for his political life and political life of his party. There's been many attacks against the opposition. He lost his MDC Alliance party, where he was president through the courts and through what many believe is state interference. Currently, is a main contender. If given free and fair elections in this country, but the environment is shutting down on him. His rallies have been banned. Some of his political activists are imprisoned and on selective application of law by the police. And he's not given the state media, access to state media. Traditional leaders are also up against his people. They are victims by traditional leaders, intimidating villagers who support Nelson Chamisa's party. But I think given a free and fair election, he can cause an upset to the ruling party. The challenge is already there's not been that direction. The country is taking a wrong direction. The elections are not likely going to be free and fair. In terms of his promises, mainly he has not given his manifesto yet for 2023, but he's mainly talking about a new great Zimbabwe. He's just giving people some sort of hope that the struggles, the economic crisis, the social crisis, public service crisis that we've been witnessing in Zimbabweans can come to an end if he gets into power. We are waiting to see his manifesto and whether he's going to give a manifesto. But so far, his message is one of change. He's simply telling citizens that there's need for change and everyone is suffering because of the ruling party. And it seems to be resonating well with the young and urbanites and even some in the rural areas, as witnessed by the number of people attending his rallies and also the township and pub discussions around the country.
Peter Mutasa, appreciate your time, and he's the chairperson of Crisis in the Zimbabwe Coalition, unpacking for us the political landscape in Zimbabwe ahead of that August 23 election.